He's short, he has thin joints and a naturally small body. Frank Zane is everything you'd never expect from a professional bodybuilder. In a sport where sheer muscle size is the standard, how could a 5'9" man weighing barely 190 pounds become Mr. Olympia 3 times? Frank Zane did not just survive in the golden era of bodybuilding, he dominated. He claimed 3 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles between 1977 and 1979. And before that, he delivered a shock to the bodybuilding world by defeating none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1968 IFBB Mr. Universe competition. Despite being smaller and lighter, Frank Zane carved out a new standard of aesthetics and proportion that no one saw coming. Many experts who witnessed that moment realized the sport would never be the same again. Suddenly, quality over quantity became a legitimate path to victory. Let's rewind to the 1960s and 70s, an era dominated by mass monsters and the rising phenomenon of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sergio Oliva, and Franco Colombo. Bigger was usually seen as better. Yet Frank Zane, competing at around 190 pounds, refused to be overshadowed. His sharp conditioning, mesmerizing posing routines, and relentless mental focus all helped him stand out. Still, he was not always the legend that we know today. To truly understand how he rose to the top, we have to start at the very beginning. Frank Zane was born in Kingston, Pennsylvania, a tough coal mining town where manual labor was common. But fully equipped weightlifting gyms were unheard of. Growing up, he was a thin, wiry kid in a rough environment. His younger brother often got himself into trouble, and Frank found himself stepping in to protect him. It wasn't long before he realized that he needed to build up his strength, both for his own confidence and to protect those around him. He realized he needed to protect himself and his younger brother, so he picked up a worn out muscle magazine, an item that would shape his entire future. Without a proper gym in Kingston, he improvised. He got himself a 30-pound dumbbell set, and occasionally he trained in a friend's basement using homemade weights and a bench. This setting was far from ideal, but for Frank, it was enough to begin exploring how his body could gain strength through consistent, focused effort. He was also a top student, particularly skilled in mathematics, and he brought that disciplined analytical mindset into his training. Instead of relying on guesswork, he recorded his progress and tested changes in sets, reps, and diet. If a new way of gripping the dumbbell produced a better contraction, he took note. If adding a certain exercise improved the look of his arms, he would repeat it. Despite the limited environment, he saw potential in every makeshift workout. What others viewed as a random basement session, Frank treated as a developing blueprint for building muscle. Each experiment or adjustment was a step toward refining both his methods and his mental approach to lifting. Aiming to unite intellect with brute force, Frank believed he could one day challenge the best in the sport. It would be a long journey to Mr. Olympia, but every session in that humble basement brought him closer to understanding how training, nutrition, and focus could merge to create something truly extraordinary. It's easy to think someone like Frank Zane had a smooth road to bodybuilding glory, but that's far from the truth. Frank was born with a naturally lean frame and very small bones. Traits that meant he never had the sheer muscle mass of his larger rivals. Sure, he had a decent structure for bodybuilding, tight waist, small hips, and very wide shoulders to give him an aesthetic look. In contrast, Arnold Schwarzenegger and others boasted big bones, a taller stature, and a naturally bulky frame that made adding mass seem almost effortless. If Frank had tried to follow that same path, his physique would have looked unbalanced and out of proportion. Instead, he had to meticulously plan every calorie and every rep just to see the smallest gains. Each pound of muscle he added was the result of hours spent analyzing training routines, experimenting with new diet strategies, and pushing himself with relentless determination. Every workout was a careful experiment, tracking sets, reps, and rest, and then tweaking his routine based on what worked best for his body. Frank knew that he could not simply bulk up like his rivals. If he tried, he would lose the proportionality that was his greatest asset. Arnold's advantage was clear: towering height, big bones, and a naturally massive build. Frank understood that matching those qualities head-on was not an option. Instead, he focused on what he could control. He chose to outcondition his opponents. Rather than wasting energy trying to add size in a way that would not suit his frame, he honed his strengths, conditioning, symmetry, and proportion. He made these the pillars of his training strategy, using his background in mathematics and science to calculate his nutrients and craft finely tuned workouts that played to his unique body structure. Frank's approach was one of constant innovation and adaptation. Every day presented the challenge of overcoming his genetic disadvantages, and every small gain was hard-earned. He tracked his progress in detailed journals, noting exactly how his body responded to each adjustment. While many of his competitors could rely on natural size and brute strength, Frank knew that success in bodybuilding was about more than just the numbers on a scale. It was about sculpting every muscle to perfection, and so he pushed himself relentlessly, understanding that even though he was born with smaller bones, he could still create a physique that was both aesthetic and powerful. While attending college, Frank continued his training and was always searching for new methods. He experimented with different exercises that emphasized muscle isolation and control. For example, he focused on high rep sets of dumbbell flies, cable crossovers, and controlled bench presses to build definition on his pecs rather than pure mass. He even added exercises like weighted crunches and reverse crunches to further refine his famous midsection. Frank was known to use slow, controlled movements, making sure every contraction was intentional and every negative or eccentric movement phase was fully emphasized. Frank also discovered the power of visualization early on. Before every workout and even before stepping on stage, he would sit quietly and picture his ideal physique. He would mentally rehearse each pose, imagining how his muscles would contract and flow under the bright stage lights. This daily practice helped him fine-tune his movements and ensured that his posing routine was as smooth and precise as possible. Diet was another key area of his experimentation. Frank focused on a clean, well-balanced diet that prioritized lean protein sources like chicken and fish, complex carbohydrates from brown rice and sweet potatoes, and plenty of vegetables for vitamins and fiber. He timed his meals carefully around his workouts, making sure to have protein-rich meals shortly after training to boost his recovery and muscle repair. Every meal was measured. He tracked his calories and macronutrients so that nothing was left to chance. Back in the day, I took a lot of supplements and tons of amino acids. Still do, but back then it was pretty unusual. That's how I got the nickname The Chemist. Friends said he looked almost zen-like backstage, eyes closed as he mentally rehearsed every pose. He believed that if he could perfect every angle in his mind, his body would follow on stage. At a time when many bodybuilders still laughed at the idea of mental training, his blend of disciplined supplement use and focused visualization spoke volumes. By strictly monitoring what he ate, he stayed lean and maintained the sharp muscle definition that became his very own trademark. In a time when most bodybuilders relied on guesswork and insane genetics, Frank's approach was systematic. He documented every aspect of his training in detailed journals, recording sets, reps, and even his own observations about how his own body felt. This constant process of evaluation and adjustment became the very foundation of his success. This methodical strategy earned him the reputation of being the thinking man's bodybuilder. Even though Frank Zane showed some promise early on, the world of 1960s bodybuilding was full of obstacles that seemed endless. Money was very tight in a sport still seen as a freak show by most people. While mainstream NBA or football athletes made a lot of money from their matches, Frank and his wife Christine had to make do with modest income from seminars, personal training sessions, and guest posing gigs. Every day brought doubts about whether such a passion could ever pay off. Then there were the physical challenges. Frank's competition featured names like Sergio Oliva, a mass monster with near mythical proportions, Arnold Schwarzenegger, an unstoppable force with impressive size and charismatic personality, and Franco Colombo, known for his incredible strength and thickness. In that lineup, it seemed impossible for a small, lean guy from Pennsylvania to stand out. Many wondered if his delicate frame would be lost amid the sheer bulk of his rivals. The obstacles did not stop there. Judges in local competitions often favored raw mass over refined conditioning. Audiences were rooting for the competitors with enormous arms or colossal chests, while Frank's shredded physique was overlooked. It was as if every competition posed a new challenge, a new test of whether his strategy could ever overcome the belief that bigger always wins. Yet rather than wallow in despair, Frank saw each problem as a challenge to be solved. He understood that if he could not win by matching his opponents in size, he could win by excelling in the details. First, he tackled the financial barrier by using every opportunity to teach and share his methods. Running seminars and writing articles not only helped him make ends meet, but also spread his philosophy of quality over quantity. Next, he addressed the physical challenges. Frank focused on his conditioning, choosing to refine his muscle definition rather than chase size. He spent countless hours perfecting the transitions between poses and chiseled each muscle group with surgical precision. Even when he saw the judges favor bulk, he doubled down on making his muscles look carved and his waist incredibly tight. That way, every curve and line on his body became a statement of control and balance. To overcome the public perception that his lean frame could not compete with massive physiques, Frank built a training regimen that capitalized on his strengths. Instead of trying to add muscle the same way his rivals did, he dedicated himself to perfecting his condition, symmetry, and proportion. By monitoring every calorie and rep in his detailed workouts, he discovered what worked best for his body. In this calculated approach, he transformed what many saw as weaknesses into his secret weapon. He also tackled the mental side of the challenge. Knowing that his competitors relied on sheer physicality, Frank turned to a disciplined mental approach. He practiced visualization techniques before every workout and competition, picturing every pose and muscle contraction in his mind. This focus helped him build a routine that was not only physically impressive, but also artistically graceful. A routine that would eventually win over both the judges and the audience. Every obstacle he encountered pushed him to innovate. When the press questioned his ability to succeed because of his small frame, he responded by proving that muscle quality and perfect form could level the playing field. When competitors with enormous size took center stage, he made sure his symmetric physique was so well defined, it forced the judges to reconsider. With every problem that he conquered, the audience was left feeling more engaged and inspired, knowing that with the right approach, you can defy all odds and win. Then came 1968, a pivotal year at the IFBB Mr. Universe in Miami. Everyone expected Arnold Schwarzenegger to win easily. Many thought that if Arnold won, it would confirm the idea that size and genetics ruled the stage. But the contest was far more dramatic than anyone anticipated. On stage, Arnold began his routine with his trademark display of raw power. Massive biceps, a confident flex of his broad chest, and the imposing aura that earned him the title of the Oak. The crowd roared as he showcased his massive frame, and for a moment it seemed that the public's expectations might be met. Then it was Frank Zane's turn. While Arnold emphasized sheer muscle mass, Frank stepped up with a completely different approach. He flowed into his routine with precise transitions that highlighted his incredible muscle separation and conditioning. Each round of poses was like a battle. While Arnold flexed with overwhelming force, Zane responded with a series of poses that emphasized fine detail, symmetry, and a level of conditioning that left little room for doubt. Then the judges began their countdown. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and 1st, Frank Zane. For the first time ever, Zane had beaten the Oak, and in doing so, he redefined what it meant to be a champion. If Arnold had won, it would have proven that raw size was all there was to it. But on that day, Frank set a new standard. Many thought that this win was a fluke. Yet that victory restored a part of his soul and proved that constant effort, perfect conditioning, and unbeatable willpower could overcome even the greatest freak genetics that Arnold showcased year after year. Frank recalled his first impression of Arnold that day. "I thought he was a big white guy without a tan. Smooth, yes, but I was not that impressed." Frank said a friend of his, Jim Haslop, who had competed in the NABA universe, reassured him, "Don't worry about Arnold. He's really smooth, but he's not the one who's in shape for the show." Frank was more concerned about other competitors who maintained their condition more rigorously. Arnold, on the other hand, later admitted his shock. "When they announced 4th and then 3rd and then 2nd place went to me, I once thought I was unbeatable. But that day I was facing Frank Zane. I was devastated. I lay in bed that night crying." The impact was immediate. Frank's victory shocked the bodybuilding community. Still, this victory, while impressive, did not instantly make Zane an untouchable champion. Bigger challenges appeared, bigger stages awaited, and not everyone was convinced he could sustain this kind of success. People thought that Arnold would come back even bigger and stronger, that Sergio Oliva would dominate the stage with impossible genetics, that maybe Franco Colombo's thickness would overshadow Frank's shredded physique. But Frank pressed forward, confident by the knowledge that at least some judges and fans now recognized the art in his approach. Fast forward a few years, after beating Arnold, Frank thought he had found his winning formula. But a new challenge appeared: Franco Colombo. Franco had been chasing his own dreams, placing second to Arnold for 3 straight years. By the time he faced Frank at the 1976 Mr. Olympia, he was thicker and more muscular than ever before. He had momentum on his side, and many believed he was ready to claim the crown. Frank, on the other hand, came in lean and ripped, with the kind of shape and symmetry people described as perfectly balanced. Where Franco impressed everyone with his compact, powerful build and dense muscles, Frank countered with a polished look. Thin waist, sharp lines, and extreme definition. Two men stood side by side, each pose turning the spotlight from Franco's thickness to Frank's sleek aesthetic lines, and then right back to Franco's heavy, solid shape and muscles. The crowd sensed a tight battle. When Franco hit a most muscular pose, his chest and arms seemed to explode with power. But when Frank flexed, the shape of every muscle group looked like a piece of art. It felt like either man could take first place. Some fans preferred Columbu's dense build, while others believed Zane's unmatched separation was the future of bodybuilding. In the end, Columbu took out Zane by only half a point. He took the title and became the first Mr. Olympia winner under 200 pounds. The loss hit Zane hard, not just because he missed out on the trophy, but because he had come so close to proving that an artistic, well-defined body could beat pure mass. To make matters worse, Columbu soon injured his left knee badly at the World's Strongest Man competition, tearing multiple ligaments and tendons, which forced him into retirement. So Zane was left with the sting of his narrow defeat, knowing that if Columbu had not gotten hurt, the rivalry might have continued. But Frank also realized that this was his chance. He vowed that 1977 would be his year. He promised himself he would return in even better condition, ready to finally claim the Mr. Olympia title that he had worked so hard to earn. Frank improved his diet even more. He made sure every meal was balanced with lean proteins, healthy carbs, and plenty of vegetables. He measured his portions and kept a strict food diary, determined not to let even a small mistake disrupt his progress. Frank also kept working on his posing routine. He practiced in front of a mirror, spending time each day to visualize how every muscle should look under the stage lights. He learned to control his body like a dancer, making sure every move was smooth and every angle perfect. This mental focus helped him overcome doubts and build the confidence he needed for the big stage. By 1977, all of his hard work began to really pay off. The next Mr. Olympia contest arrived and Frank stepped onto the stage. His body was leaner, his muscles more defined, and his posing routine had become almost flawless. The crowd watched in awe as he moved gracefully from one pose to the next. Every angle of his body spoke of precision and discipline. This time, his performance left no room for doubt. When the results were announced, the judges placed him first. Frank Zane did it. He finally won. He proved to himself and the entire world that a small kid could become strong and win over bigger guys with better genetics. His victory was a powerful message. Size was not the only key to success. His comeback proved that with careful planning and a focus on quality over quantity, even a bodybuilder with a naturally lean frame could become a champion. The win in 1977 was more than just a title. It was the result of years of constant learning and adjustment. Frank's victory was a turning point in bodybuilding, paving the way for future athletes to focus on symmetry and conditioning rather than just mass. The comeback also restored a part of Frank's spirit. After years of doubt and setbacks, that moment on stage gave him the confidence to keep pushing forward. His meticulous approach was validated by the judges and embraced by the fans. People began to see that bodybuilding could be about more than just lifting heavyweights. It could be a form of art. In the days that followed, fans and other competitors started to talk about how Frank had redefined what it meant to be a champion. The world of bodybuilding was beginning to accept that there was room for a new kind of competitor, one who fought with intellect as much as with muscle. He shocked everyone by winning the title in 1977, but he wasn't done yet. He built on that success and repeated his victory in 1978 and 1979, winning 3 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles. He built a legacy. Each year, he refined his routine further. His poses became more graceful and his muscle definition more striking. The journey from near defeat to back-to-back victories not only restored his confidence, but also shifted the entire way the sport was viewed. Frank's redemption was not a single moment, but a process. A journey of small improvements, setbacks, and steady progress. Every change he made, every adjustment to his diet, training or posing contributed to the victory that marked his comeback. The stage was set for him to become an icon in the sport, proving that determination and smart work could overcome even the toughest challenges. After winning his third Mr. Olympia in 1979, Frank faced a new challenge. A poolside accident in 1980 cost him 15 pounds of muscle, and he never quite regained that signature midsection. As the sport shifted toward bigger muscles, his contest results dipped, but his impact only grew. The chemist changed bodybuilding forever, even long after he stopped winning. Many aspiring bodybuilders studied his methods and looked up to him as a true pioneer in the art of the sport. Frank Zane's legacy shows that you don't have to be huge to be a champion. He proved that shape, symmetry, and conditioning can win titles, not just raw muscle mass. His training methods and workout journals are still a reference for bodybuilders who value a classic, aesthetic look. With his famous vacuum pose and abs, he set a gold standard that changed the sport. When people talk about classic physique, his name always comes up. His 3 Mr. Olympia wins stand as proof that smart, precise training can overcome any physical limitations. Frank's career is a lasting reminder that hard work and discipline can redefine success in bodybuilding. Frank Zane overcame the odds by carving out his own path, reminding us that you don't need perfect genetics to reach the top. If you are meticulous, passionate, and patient, you can change the game. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive into the life of the thinking man's bodybuilder. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know which legend you want us to cover next. Thank you once again for watching, and see you guys in the next video.